Human tasks and activities are often intricate and complex, especially the most refined. In this harpist, for example, it would be a fallacy to measure physical impairment of a finger as percentage of the whole body. It is not the impairment itself, but the functional disability that should and can be measured. Growth impairments, especially those neuromuscular and musculoskeletal deficits resulting in motion and gait disturbances, are probably the most important indication for regular prospective follow-up and documentation. This documentation better be accurate, reproducible, thorough, objective, and easy to store and retrieve. Although usually considered as a separate entity, the musculoskeletal system is involved in disability of other systems such as neurological, endocrine, and the multiple body systems. Joint range of motion is the primary factor of disability in this system, and the corresponding AMA guidelines are still all based on the traditional goniometer. Albeit normal goniometer readings, the left knee of this young runner, when measured dynamically, never goes to full extension at the end of a stride, unlike the right knee. Slight shoulder imbalance is also noted. These subtle changes can be of paramount importance for a highly demanding task, as well as in trying to assess the full extent of residual functional capacity in a severely handicapped person. Measuring joint range of motion is essential in disability evaluation. However, the traditional goniometer is obsolete when it comes to a functional dynamic assessment versus a static measurement of a physical impairment. George DiGirolamo, a 22-year-old policeman, sustained a left shoulder injury after a motor vehicle accident. About 2 years later, he developed a severe bursitis of the left shoulder blade that required a surgical excision as well as resection of the tip of the scapula.
I'm a police officer. I was a passenger in my friend's motor vehicle, and we were involved in a head-on collision. My work conditions presently are hampered in some way because of the injury. I have 60% less range of motion than I did before the surgery. What bothers me the most is probably performing my job duties, daily activities as a police officer.
Used in the range of motion diagnostic mode, the ARIEL multifunction machine can measure the total functional range of motion of the upper extremity in various planes. George DiGirolamo is starting with his intact right upper extremity to set his own baseline in the frontal plane. The curve on the screen describes the total functional range of motion of his right shoulder. The y-axis represents machine angular displacement. The same procedure is repeated for the disabled left upper extremity to comparatively determine its total functional range of motion. The patient will stop as soon as he feels pain in the shoulder area. This test is accurate, reproducible, and very easy to perform. The curve obtained shows a significant deficit in the left as compared to the right shoulder. Large discrepancies in the results of serial repetition should strongly suggest malingering. Determining specific task requirements is essential for a functional and dynamic disability evaluation. Keyboard operating is probably one of the most common tasks nowadays. It can cause disabling occupational injuries such as carpal tunnel syndrome. In Barbara's case, 4 muscle groups of the left upper extremity were selected: deltoid, anterior portion, biceps, flexor, and extensor groups. Surface electrodes with built-in preamplifiers are picking up the electromyographic signal. This screen represents a continuous 2-second period of EMG recording at a rate of 1,000 Hertz. The subtle alternation of flexor and extensor can be noted, whereas deltoid and biceps are acting more as support muscles. The task is simultaneously videotaped with at least 2 cameras for a 3-dimensional picture. The collected data is later digitized, yielding kinematic information on body segments as minute as the finger and on joints as minute as the knuckles. The whole task can be played back frame by frame or continuously in the plane desired by the investigator. This is a top view of the same typing task. Functional task-related range of motion, velocity, and acceleration of each of the joints of the upper extremity can be obtained from the kinematic data at any discrete position or in a continuous mode, thus enhancing the diagnostic potential. The curve displayed shows the 3-dimensional acceleration of the wrist joint during the sample typing task. Separate X, Y, or Z planes acceleration can be obtained for various wrist motions. This is the thumb acceleration curve. Like the goniometer, the grip and pinch dynamometers should step down for a more accurate and reproducible method of measurement in upper extremity disability evaluation. Kinetic data, such as force, can also be derived from the kinematic parameters seen as the product of mass times acceleration. Low back pain is the first epidemic in disabling chronic occupational diseases, and it is intimately related to lifting in most cases, or in ergonomic terms, to lifting technique. Using the aerial digitizer with both EMG and video, we will illustrate the kinematic and kinetic differences between lifting with the knees bent and lifting with the back bent. Electrodes are applied to both quadriceps and erector spinae. The number of muscles that can be analyzed simultaneously is practically unlimited. Telemetric EMG can also be used. There is significantly more activity in the erector spinae as compared to the quadriceps when the back is bent during lifting. The inverse relationship is seen when the knees are bent. Notice the decreased activity in the erector spinae as compared to the back bent lifting technique. Corresponding kinematic data are derived from the cameras, and the entire task can be reviewed frame by frame or continuously. The applications of this data collection and analysis technology are obviously numerous in the fields of occupational and industrial medicine, as well as rehabilitation medicine, especially with regard to measuring residual functional capacity. Standard kinematic and kinetic parameters derived from an expert system database can be established for every task, including the activities of daily living. Gait analysis is still the most basic and widespread application of this technology. A wealth of parameters can be synchronously measured, including force plate data. The force plate measures all three components of the impact force: vertical, most prominent, antero-posterior, and lateral. Gait analysis has numerous applications in both children and adults, and in the musculoskeletal as well as neurological systems. Most of all, this system requires a meticulous physical examination that should be accurately recorded in a computerized database. It is foreseeable that the electroencephalogram can also be stored in this database after analog to digital conversion. Recruitment of motor neurons and muscle fibers, as well as fine coordination, can be functionally assessed by the frequency spectrum and the time parameters of the electromyogram, such as firing sequence, antagonist alternation, and distributed excitation. Sampling rates of up to 10,000 Hz can be used for this purpose. Measuring tremor, such as in Parkinson's disease, is also possible with the use of accelerometry. Mental disorders can represent the primary disability, but also very often complicate other causes of disability, especially in the perception of pain. Indeed, pain tolerance and psychological overtones can dramatically affect perceived disability, as in low back pain, for example. As you can see, the McGill Pain Assessment Questionnaire can be administered efficiently with a computer. For example, the patient can accurately pinpoint the painful zones with a computer mouse, minimizing the effect of a language barrier. The Minnesota Multiphasic Personality Inventory is a widely used test for assessing personality disorders, especially as they affect perceived disability and residual functional capacity with regard to willingness to go back to work. Although not as well documented yet, the sickness impact profile of the University of Washington is also a useful test to assess health in the immediate past. The respiratory system requires a thorough physical examination as well as x-rays and other tests for diagnostic purposes. However, pulmonary function testing provides the basis for assessing the impairment once diagnosis is established. The main parameters derived from a pulmonary function test are the forced expiratory volume, FEV1, the forced vital capacity, FVC, and the ratio. These parameters can all be measured digitally and stored in a central database. Oxygen consumption measurement and exercise testing can also be done, following the same algorithm. Exercise testing also applies naturally to the cardiovascular system and can use one or both of the aerial exercise machines along with the real-time EKG and blood pressure monitoring. A pilot study performed by Dr. Tobias Palma and his team showed that the aerial exerciser can usefully replace the conventional treadmill. 63-year-old George Kaufman is one of the patients of this study. He suffered obstructions of 4 coronary vessels and sustained a quadruple coronary artery bypass graft surgery in January of '85.
I work as a head custodian at the Satan Elementary School District. I worked there for 25 years. As a head custodian, I cut the grass, I plant flowers, and I shovel the snow and plow snow, lift up heavy weights, and more or less repair heavy machinery. Well, it was on a Sunday about 3.5 years ago. I received pains in my chest and my left arm. And as I was reading the paper, I told my wife and I told the people there that I was feeling very ill. And they in turn said that I was having a heart attack after an emergency. I would say it was somewhere around 40 days after the operation. The owner of the place says I received a new machine they call the ARIEL machine, and he asked that I be the one to practice on it, try it out and see how it operated. And I volunteered for it. What I was doing on the machine was that an actual bench pressing and weightlifting, which from knee high up, and bending over and bending and picking up from the bottom, which is actually the same as I was doing in my job. Well, I think that the thread mill and the other machines was building my lower part of my body, but the ARIEL machine seemed to have taken care of my waist up, which my arms and my chest was being built up. The machine, I think in itself, was doing more for my upper body, which I was more used to doing. My work is consisting of lifting, and this was helping me out on my upper body, and my torsos were being stronger. It helped me build the bodies. It helped me get more confidence into myself that I can do this kind of work, in which I think before this machine was available, I was afraid to do anything. I was afraid to lift. I was afraid to do much of anything until the machine was operating. It was 30 days, I think, before I went back to work after using the ARIEL machine.
Numerous performance curves and statistics can be generated by the ARIEL exerciser and stored in the central database. One important statistic for picking up a malingerer, for example, would be the standard deviation of the peak force among all repetitions of the same exercise. It is expected that the standard deviation will be very small and the peak force practically constant from one repetition to another if the patient is not faking. Among other useful information, especially for residual functional capacity evaluation, measurement of fatigue onset throughout the various repetitions is also provided. All 40 patients of the PAMA study had one or more severe cardiac diagnoses, such as myocardial infarction, CABG, or PTCA surgery. As far as physical workload, most of them were sedentary, but heavy and moderate workloads, as well as light, were also represented. The average age was about 50 across occupational groups. A rather interesting finding is that despite differences in the workloads, all groups performed practically the same in all 5 exercises. They were strongest in squat, then bench, and lift. This finding marks a step beyond the conventional treadmill, since a similar goal is achieved, yet using better work-related exercises. During the performance of these exercises, the pulse can be recorded in real time using telemetry. A belt is placed around the patient's chest, serving as an emitter. A receptor microprocessor device is placed at the wrist. The data is then downloaded to memory and stored in the central database. Several parameters and curves can also be obtained for immediate assessment. Blood pressure can also be measured automatically during exercise and the data digitally stored. Other cardiovascular tests can also be obtained and stored in real time or deferred in a central database, such as peripheral, Doppler, and intercompartmental pressure. Most of the tests for special senses and speech can also be computer administered. Such tests are for vision, the Snellen test for central visual acuity and the Goldman chart for peripheral vision. Object size and illumination can be computerized and the percent of visual field efficiency automatically computed. It is 92% for the right eye of this patient. Besides special tests for equilibrium assessment, such as nystagmometry or even EMG of eye muscles that can be digitally collected and logged into a central database, various audiometric tests can be computerized as well, such as pure tone audiometry or even speech discrimination. For better accuracy and reproducibility, a program can be designed to pronounce the words at the selected speed and pitch.
Baseball, 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 baseball. School, 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 school.
All data collected, especially for special senses and speech and for mental disorders, is compared to American national standards. Ideally, a time-sharing computer network will compile and analyze all data collected with the ARIEL technology. Standards will be established when needed, and cross-validation studies with equivalent data will be performed. Such study has been performed by the Defense and Civil Institute of Environmental Medicine in Ontario, Canada, that demonstrated the validity of the ACE, one of the strong points of the latter being its calibration procedures. For video data, all cameras are initialized by videotaping the same landmark cube. That can be a variable size depending on the body segment involved. As for the ACE,
what we're about to demonstrate is a calibration procedure of the ARIEL multifunction unit. The calibration procedure will involve calibration of the analog units for force, velocity, and range of motion. First, calibration will be for velocity. Move the bar to stop position, move the bar to start position, and we hang 50 pounds of weight on the bar. That's it.
Put it on the bar.
Back up, please. Release. Thank you. Again, that was for velocity calibration. We'll now demonstrate position calibration. And the third analog to be calibrated is force calibration. For the force calibration, we need 3 sets of weights in the increments of 20 pounds, 50 pounds, and 90 pounds. First part is to hang 20 pounds on the instrument. What in effect we are doing is teaching the computer algorithm what 20 pounds of weight feels like through the range of motion. Out of the way. And now we repeat the procedure with 90 pounds of weight. Step back. That now completes the full calibration procedure, which takes approximately 5 minutes. This procedure is done on a daily, weekly, or monthly basis, depending upon the needs of the particular investigator. On a quick daily basis, one can do a calibration check to ensure that the instrumentation is accurate for one's daily testing needs, or daily therapeutic needs. This is done again very quickly by choosing number 7 on the calibration screen, moving the bar to stop position, moving the bar to start position. Then one chooses a particular weight load. In this case, we're going to choose 90 pounds. We'll then let the instrument measure the poundage throughout the range of motion, and if the calibration is accurate, it'll give us an accurate reading on the screen. Okay, we'll note that we have 90 pounds on the calibration, and we will further note that it is 90 pounds throughout the entire range of the motion of the bar, so that is a very accurate calibration.
The ultimate internal validation and calibration procedure is the ability to accurately compare the results obtained by the arm-leg machine on the one hand and the digitizer on the other, while performing a velocity diagnostic procedure with the arm-leg machine. As mentioned earlier, a great deal of this ability related to multiple body systems or endocrine system is of musculoskeletal and or neurological nature and can be quantified as such. As for our digestive, genitourinary, and hematopoietic systems, findings can be stored in a central database and the functional impact of the activities of daily living and work capacity measured with this technology. For skin, qualitative video assessment can be performed. From Baryshnikov's outstanding pirouette to the fine motions of a renowned harpist's fingers, there is nothing that cannot be measured by this technology. Our aim for the future is to collect considerable amounts of data on real patients in real work conditions. This only can allow USF to tie all these loose ends into one amazingly efficient package based on a holistic, dynamic, and objective approach to evaluate disability. This approach to disability evaluation is essentially positive, focusing on a residual functional capacity and even contributing to enhance it for an early and safe return to work.